Create Art Podcast. Fred Rogers' approach to podcasting from Podwrecked. Hello, friend. This is Timothy Chemo Bryan, your head instigator for Create Art Podcast, where I use my 20 years of experience in education and the arts world to help you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. This episode, I usually do these for KDOI rebroadcasts, but this one was recorded for another podcast that I worked on called Podwrecked. And I worked on that with my good friend Kyle Bondo. And this episode is all about the Fred Rogers approach to podcasting. And I was doing this talk at a podcasting conference back a number of years ago. I believe it was 2018. Right before the big old pandemic thing happened. And this one is a really important thing for artists to think about, not just podcasters, but for artists of all ilk. Before I get into this talk, I did want to mention something that's very important to me. On June 24th, the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. This decision has stripped away the legal rights to a safe and legal abortion. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans. This decision could lead to the loss of other rights. To learn more about what you can do to help, go to podvoices.help. I encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word. So thank you for indulging me on that. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it on over to my talk on Fred Rogers' approach to podcasting. Hi there, this is Timothy Chemo Bryan, and we're doing a special summer episode for you here on Podwrecked. That's right, I'm flying solo today, but the reason why I'm flying solo is because Kyle and I, we do a monthly meetup locally here in Fredericksburg. And our last meetup, we were talking about the Fred Rogers style of podcasting. Now, this is a warm-up for my talk at Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference up in Atlantic City later on this year in September. So if you can't make it to that conference and you couldn't make it to the meetup, well, folks, this is your third chance. This is the way to do it. So here we go. The Fred Rogers style of podcasting. I bet you all didn't know Fred Rogers had a podcast. Well, he doesn't. But we're going to break this down into 8 topics here for us. Who is Fred Rogers? Some of you don't know. It's amazing. The philosophy behind the Fred Rogers style of podcasting. We'll have a obligatory audience exercise, which will be interesting for you listening in on this podcast. But I want you to try it out. We'll talk a little bit about fourth wall theater, customer service, fake it till you, creating an avatar, and changing your vocabulary. Now, who is this Fred Rogers guy? Well, in our meetup, everybody knew who Fred Rogers is. And most people, I think, do know he is. But there could be some people out there that have no idea who this Fred Rogers guy is. Well, he's a children's TV show host. He's a puppeteer, musician, a minister, and a public TV advocate. Now, not a lot of people know that back in 1969, he went up to Congress and actually talked to the Congress people there about the importance of public TV, and especially the kind of TV that he does, which is education, especially for young children. So he's been doing a lot of interesting things his whole life. his show started, the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, started in 1969, went all the way till 2001. Folks, he knows what he's doing. And what I'd like to start off this show with, this podcast with, is think back to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. What is happening in every episode? It's a direct address to the audience. And who is his audience? Well, his audience is children. Now, we can think of our audience members as being children. We'll talk a little bit later about who your audience is and how you can envision it better. But his audience was children every day of the week. He ran that show 5 days a week and came up with new stuff all the time. And if you think about it, he was doing direct address to the audience right there. He was bringing them in. Anytime he went on a field trip, he would always introduce my television friend here. Not friends, friend. So I made it singular. And I know other shows were doing it too. Sesame Street was doing it, but Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, 90% of the time. So I know that there is a lot of shows out there that are doing the direct address to the audience. But here's the thing with Mr. Rogers. 90% of the time, he was doing the direct address to the audience. And, you have Sesame Street, about 80% of the time, 70% of the time, they're doing a direct address to the audience. Mr. Rogers is doing it all the time. Even when he was doing, going out on field trips, he was doing a direct address to the audience. He was bringing you in to wherever he was going. He'd always introduce you as my television friend. Not friends. He kept it singular. So he's got 9 rules for talking to children. And I'd like to go over those here with you, and then we're going to have an exercise to show you how to utilize it. Now, these 9 rules for talking to children, just substitute that for your audience. So the first rule is state the idea you wish to express as clearly as possible. Seems kind of obvious. Rephrase it in a positive manner. Wouldn't you like to have better contact with, better, interaction with your audience? Ooh, that's positive. Rephrase the idea, keeping in mind your audience may not be able to pick up on subtle distinctions. Rephrase your idea to eliminate all elements that could be considered prescriptive, directive, or instructive. So the way I read that is, if we rephrase it, so that way it's not prescriptive, directive, or instructive, we're helping the audience think it's their idea. Rephrase any element that suggests certainty, because not everything is always going to work out the way we want it to. I do my show. I've done projects, and when I do a project, I do it my way. But there's no guarantee that if you do it my way, the way that I'm telling you to do it, there's no guarantee that it's going to turn out the same exact way. Rephrase your idea to eliminate any element that may not apply to all children. Now, you may go, well, parents, not all children have parents. Sometimes, kids are being watched by grandparents, aunts, uncles, foster parents. So you don't want to leave them out. You don't want to leave anyone in your audience out if you can at all avoid it. Add a simple motivational idea that gives a reason to follow your advice. Well, hey, more listeners. That's what we all want. More interaction with our listeners. I think that's what we all want. Rephrase your new statement, repeating the first step. Again, the first step is state the idea you wish to express as clearly as possible. And then rephrase your idea a final time, relating it to some phase of development. Now, here's how it works in action. It is dangerous to play in the street. Simple idea. Very straightforward, you would think. It is good to play where it is safe. Ooh, that's being positive. Ask your parents where it is safe to play. Your parents will tell you where it is safe to play. Your parents can tell you where it is safe to play. Ooh, instead of will, they can. There might be failure there. Your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it's safe to play. There we go. That's where we move it from parents to grown-ups. And they can tell you where it's safe to play. Your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it's safe to play, and it is a good idea to listen to them. Oh, hey, there's some benefit in there. Your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it's safe to play. It is important to try to listen to them. Wow. If we listen to our parents, we might find, or our favorite grown-up, we might find a safe place to play. Your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it is safe to play. It is important to try to listen to them. And listening is an important part of growing. So we start off with something kind of negative. It's dangerous to play in the street with, and then we end it with, your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it's safe to play. It is important to try to listen to them, and listening is an important part of growing. That's kind of what we try to do here in this in this podcast. Is we try to give you tips and strategies to make your podcast the best it can be. Now, in the quasi TED Talk that I'm doing at MapCom and the meetup that we did, we had the obligatory audience exercise. You have to have one of these. So it takes two people. Okay, person A, find someone new, tell them how your day is going. Person B, listen and watch body language. Are they being genuine? Is this somebody you want to listen to? Switch roles. So whereas A is observing B. But here's the thing. A, close your eyes. See if you can tell. If they're convincing, they're doing a good job. If they're not convincing, if they're not drawing you in with your eyes closed, well, think about your listener. Are they seeing you while you're doing this live? Most podcasts, no. Some of your podcasts out there, yep, they're doing it live on YouTube or Discord or wherever they're doing it from. But for the most part, your listeners are just listening to their headphones. And if you can't be genuine and you can't tell them how your day is, you might want to rethink what you're doing there. Now, this is all kind of nice in window dressing for what it really is. And this is a convention known as breaking the fourth wall. It's a theatrical convention. Goes all the way back to the times of Shakespeare. Shakespeare uses it for comedic effect. The naturalists theater movement, which was in the 1800s, late 1800s, used it extensively through all their shows. They were always direct addressed to the audience. They were in the audience's face, and they included them in the shows. Now, film is using this convention, and they've been doing it for a number of years. The slide that I have here, and hopefully you're reading through the show notes and you can see the slide. It's Kevin Branagh. He's been doing a lot of Shakespearean shows, and one of the things that he does is he does break the fourth wall. And I like how he does Shakespeare, but he gets a little too cute with it. He kind of winks at the audience and goes, "Ha, see how witty I am." There's other shows out there that are doing it. There's other movies out there that are doing it very well, probably better than Kenneth Branagh, but he's known for it. So if you want to see it in action on film, go look at his Hamlets, Othello, any of his shows. And last but not least, video games are now the latest user of breaking the fourth wall. So it's not just enough to flashing lights and great sound. We have to break through that screen and reach the audience when they're playing video games. Now, I've got an extensive background in customer service. I worked for Verizon Wireless, T-Mobile, Motorola, and the thing of it is that we're talking to people over the phone, which is kind of like a podcast each and every time. But one of the things that we learned in customer service class, yes, there's a class for it, is to smile. If you're not smiling, you're not having a good time. And who wants to listen to somebody not having a good time? We have enough issues going on in our life that we don't need to listen to somebody, that's ticked off and just down in the dumps and nobody needs to hear that. We want to hear positivity. We want to hear your smile. So smile. And if you have a hard time doing it, go get a mirror. Put that up in your studio and use that mirror for yourself. And, it's hard to say smile without smiling. And I would just say, pop that up there, check in with yourself every once in a while, make sure you're smiling. Amp up the energy and charisma. If you're doing your podcast, you're recording it. I get up at 4 a.m. I'm not recording a podcast at 4 a.m. I'm usually doing it in the evening, kind of before I go to bed. And that usually wipes me out after I do the podcast, after I record it, especially when I'm recording with Kyle. Oh my God, folks, if you want to know energy, record with Kyle. He is a firebomb. So amp up the energy and the charisma. And by all means, don't let the audience know that you're having a bad day. That's not what they're tuned in for you. That's not why they're tuned into the show. Okay, don't let that come across. If your dog just died, maybe you shouldn't record that day. Do your 10 stages of grieving, whatever it is. But don't let them know that you're having a bad day. Because they don't need to know that. That's not, Dave Jackson always says, you don't have to describe the sausage and, show them how the sausage is made. You don't need to do that. All right. So the world famous ex-high school girlfriend guide to relationships, fake it till you make it. Yeah. One of my ex-girlfriends always said that to me. Sometimes I fake it till I make it with some guys. And my question is, why are you faking it with me? Of course not. Folks, sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it. You've got a deadline. You've got to get that show out so that way you can edit it and record it. Don't be a used car salesman, okay? Hey, did it. People can hear that through your voice, especially if your other podcasts, if your other episodes are at about an 8 or a 9, and if you punch it through to a 12, people are going to be like, yeah, there's something up there. Another technique that you can use, Post-it notes, or write it. If you're using a script, write it in your script. Write in there. Smile. Put it as an aside. Put it as a stage direction. Smile at yourself. Say something nice. Make it appropriate for the show that you're doing. Practice this in real life. I mean, people really enjoy being around positive people. It's just a fact of life. No one likes to be around the guy at the water cooler that's boo-hoo-hoo and my life sucks and this job sucks and after a while it gets old because you see that guy walking around or that gal walking around and you avoid them. Don't have your audience avoid you because you're having a bad day. And last but not least, don't obsess over this. Just build awareness in yourself. It will come. It is a skill that can be learned. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised. Don't obsess over it. Don't do what Kyle does and, have 50 different note cards and string and map it out, mind map it out. Don't do that. Just build awareness in yourself and you'll be okay. Now, fortunately, I had a wonderful little screenshot for you here. And if you're looking at it in the show notes, it's a picture of the Avatar folks from the movie Avatar. I'm going to ask you, create an avatar for yourself. Look at your audience profiles. If you got them on Facebook, God, I was going to say MySpace there for a second. If you got them on Facebook, you got them on Twitter, you got them on Instagram, take a look at their profiles. See what they look like. Envision who would listen. So if you're just starting out, it's really defining who that audience is going to be. So envision who's going to listen to this. Look around at conferences. I'm going to be up at MapCon when I do this talk. I'm looking around at that conference, seeing who may be needing to listen to Podwrecked. I go to other conferences like Comic-Cons and art shows. Who would listen to this? I take a mental picture of them. Sometimes I take a physical picture of them as well. Whatever that is, post it near your work area. Put it right next to the mirror. That way you can direct address that. If that's easier for you, by all means, go ahead and do it. Direct address your avatar. Give it a name and knock it out for yourself. All right, changing your vocabulary. What we say matters. So instead of, hey, my listeners out there, you, because you're in somebody's ear right now. They got their headphones in. Maybe one of the headphones are in, the other one's hanging out. They're doing some running or jogging or whatnot. Maybe they have you in the background. That's okay. You're talking to that one person. Thank you versus thanks. Oh, it takes more words. It takes a little bit more effort. But thank you for listening versus thanks for listening. That's for everybody. But if I hand it directly to you, you're more than likely going to listen to that. I versus we, and I'm guilty of this one too. The royal we. We here at, Podwrecked. Well, if Kyle is here, then it's a we. But since Kyle is not here right now, it's an I. So I thank you for listening into Podwrecked. Friend versus, hey everyone, hey friend. Maybe that's not your cup of tea. It doesn't roll off the tongue too well. Well, think of something that is more singular. Hey despicable versus hey despicables. Whatever you call your audience, make it singular. That way they feel that you're directly talking to them. Think about the concert that was a great concert for you, and the lead singer was singing right at you. Guess what? They were singing at your forehead, or they were singing to the gal 3 rows behind you. They weren't singing to you, but they made you feel that they were singing to you. That's what you want to do with your audience. Now, Kyle and I use this slide where it's a person standing in front of about 30 people. And we always use this slide in our talks because, some people, they're just starting off their podcast. And they're like, oh, I only got 30 listens. Well, if you look at it, that's 30 people. That's a lot of people. And we're like, hey, you're talking to these people. So I'm going to flip the script on this. I'm going to use the same slide. One person standing in front of 30 people. Talk to one person. Pick the person you want to talk to and talk directly to that person. Maybe they emailed you. Bring that person up in the show. That's going to make them feel special. That's going to make other people go, hey, he brought Jerry. He talked about Jerry that whole show. Maybe I should write in because Jerry wrote in. Maybe I'll write in. He'll talk about me. The next show you talk about, Stacy. Oh, well, Stacy wrote in. I'm going to talk about Stacy. This is what we talked about. Dun, 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 dun. So pick one person to talk to in your audience. Here's the takeaway for you about this whole thing. Have you been talking directly to your audience? Think about that. Are you talking directly to your audience? If you said yes to that, you and your audience wins. So if you're not doing it, you might want to start doing that for yourself. Well, this has been another episode of Podwrecked. I am hosting this one by myself, Timothy Kim O'Brien. You can always reach us at podwrecked.com on our website. We have a Patreon account there too. Or you can email us at podwrecked@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We want to help you improve your podcast. We want to help you reach out to that audience. That audience member that may be on the fence. Maybe they're going to write in. Maybe they're going to tell a friend, hey, listen, they talked about me last episode because I wrote in. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Take that idea and run with it. All right. Well, I want to thank you for listening to Podwrecked. And until next time, have a good day. All right. So that was my talk on the Fred Rogers approach to podcasting. I think you can use a lot of these approaches in whatever discipline of art that you are into. And this is just another side project that I work on with Podwrecked from time to time. So definitely take a listen to it. It's at podwrecked.com. You can find all the previous episodes there and learn how to, do podcasting a little bit better for yourself, or as we say, survive your podcast. Now, as far as for you and I, again, I want to thank you for listening on into this special episode. And I'd like to ask, two things from you here. One, if you got anything out of it, feel free to pass it on to a friend that may benefit from this. The other thing is, if this wasn't a 5-star podcast for you, if you wouldn't rate this as 5 stars, can you shoot me an email, timothy@createartpodcast.com, and let me know what would make it a 5-star podcast in your opinion. I really appreciate that, and I thank you for that. I'm trying to bring to you the best quality the information that you want in this podcast. And speaking about podcasts, I have 2 other podcasts that I work on. Find a Podcast About, which helps you to, find that binge-worthy podcast and outsmart the algorithm. You can find that one at findapodcastabout.xyz. And then the other podcast I work on is Clearly Obtuse. And that podcast is not for the faint of heart. That podcast is all about what would a avant-garde podcast sound like. You can find it at clearlyobtuse.com. Take a listen, share it with friends, and hopefully, you learn something out of all 3 of these podcasts. All right. Well, you know what I'm going to say next. Go out there and tame that inner critic. Create more than you consume. And go make some art for somebody you love, yourself. I'll see you next time, and thanks for joining in.